Welcome everybody. This is Dan Goodwin, God's Final Jubilee Ministries, God's Final Jubilee Program. Glad to have you with us today. An important follow-up to my last YouTube program. If you saw my last one, I talked about the truth about Judge Roy Moore, and I'm going to talk about that again tonight for just a few minutes. This is Sunday night, November, the Sunday before Thanksgiving. And I'm going to try to be brief, but I want to be a help to you tonight with all this craziness going on. This is the God's Final Jubilee program. You can find me at godsfinaljubilee.com. And I'm the author of the book, The Mystery of the Jubilee, as well as God's Final Jubilee, The Barley Harvest, and several other books. But tonight I want to share with you what's going on in the world as far as politics go. And I want to talk about the subject, the truth about the Senate race and Judge Moore. The truth about the Senate race and Judge Moore. And I want to help you tonight. I want to help you get on the right side of this issue. I am so frustrated with not only newscasters, as well as some of our Fox News crowd and others. I'm very upset with the Christian Post, and I'm very glad to mention their name on my program. Very upset with you, Christian Post. You've got 750,000 viewers or people, followers on your site, CP, Christian Post. And it just seems like you've become a smut place, and all you're doing is sharing crazy left-wing stories about Judge Moore and casting a terrible shadow upon that man. And I'm going to share some things tonight with my audience here. And I welcome Christian Post and their leadership to touch base with me. I'd love to talk with you. But why don't we get on the right side of this issue? A man is being accused of something without evidence, and he's being thrown under the bus. And it's unbelievable. So the truth about the Senate race and Mr. Judge Moore. And I want to open your eyes to something. I got about 10 points here. I'm going to go through them quickly. I got some facts. Fact number one. There are 7 to 9 women. I don't even know anymore. It seems like I heard 9 today, but I thought it was 7. Maybe there's 9. There are 7 to 9 women who have come forward with some sort of an accusation against Judge Moore. 7 to 9 women. All right, and most of you already know this. All right, number 2. Point number 2, fact number 2. That's a fact, 7 to 9. By the way, there'll be more. There will be more women that will come forward as we get closer to the December 12th election. By the way, let me back up here. This is all going on because, number 1, Attorney General Sessions was the he was the senator in Alabama. Mr. Trump, President Trump, picked him to be the Attorney General. So that left his Senate seat open, which the Republican governor filled that seat temporarily until a special election can be held. And Mr. Strange, Senator Strange, got that seat, and he is now the sitting Republican senator in the Senate, filling Alabama's, one of those 2 Alabama seats. And so a primary was held to see who was going to run. And of course, Mr. Strange was already there, and he chose to run for the seat. And so did Judge Moore, and I think some others did as well. Mitch McConnell, it's reported, him and his minions have given over $35 million to that primary race to help Mr. Strange win. Now, I don't like that. I don't like it when outsiders get involved in a state race. I think it's wrong. I think a state race ought to be a state race. I think it's the business of that state to determine who their elected officials are going to be. And I think it's sad when when outsiders get involved. $35 million poured in there by Mitch McConnell, who I believe is a rhino, who I believe is not a conservative at all, and he's part of the problem. He's part of the swamp in Washington, D.C. Paul Ryan as well, and John McCain and many others. And So what does all that mean? It just means that's what's going on. So the primary was held, and Judge Roy Moore won, and won very, very nicely. Well, since he won, they've come out with this attack on him. The first woman that came out claims that when she was 14 years old, that Judge Moore did some terrible things. And I'm not going to read on my program the things that he's being accused of, because I don't believe that's right. Because what that does is it casts a shadow on somebody, even though they may be innocent. People get this in their mind, and it's hard to shake. So I'm not going to read any of these accusations, and most of you already know what these accusations are, and I'm not going to read them here. But the first accusation came and against Judge Moore by a woman who was 14 at the time. And since then, several others have come out. There's 7 to 9 so far. All right, so you with me so far? That's point number 1. There are 7 to 9 women who have come out with some sort of an accusation against Judge Roy Moore. And, all right, number 2, my second fact that I want to share with you tonight. Fact number 2 is this. Fact number 2 is only 2 of the girls who have, the women who have accused Judge Moore, only 2 of the 9, 7 or 9, whatever it is, only 2 of the 9 have accused Judge Moore of an illegal offense. I bet you haven't heard that in the news. Every time you listen to the news, there's all these teenagers that have come out against Mr. Moore. All these women, 9 women have come out with accusation. No, 2 women. Are you listening? 2 women have come out accusing the judge of an illegal act, a felonious act, by the way. 2 of them, and that's the one who was 14 at the time, and another one who was 16 at the time. The 14-year-old is the one who claims the judge called her on the phone. It all started at the courthouse. The girl's mom supposedly was going for a court hearing, and Judge Roy Moore came out, saw that she had a teenage girl, and said, "Look, leave her with me, and I'll take care of her." And this mother, for some reason, leaves her teenage daughter with a strange man. That makes no sense to me. That's a flaw in the story, by the way. And then he gets her phone number, supposedly. And a few days later, according to her, he calls her on the phone. She takes the call in her bedroom. And she agrees to meet him, and meets him on the corner and gets in his car. And that's all the story I'm going to read. Takes her a half hour away to his house. Supposedly, according to her, terrible things happened, and he brought her back. By the way, if terrible things happened and he brought her back, that man's going to jail. Who would be that stupid? Think about this. Think about that accusation. Who would be that stupid? First of all, there's a phone record. So if her body is found somewhere and she's been murdered, the first thing, they look at the phone record. Who has this girl talked to in the last week? Judge Roy Moore's phone number is going to be on the log. He's going to get investigated. He's going to jail. That makes no sense at all. By the way, the mother was interviewed by Breitbart News, and you know what she said? She said there was never a phone in her daughter's bedroom, never. So that's a flaw. I mean, the man would have to be awful stupid to make that phone call and then pick her up and commit a felony and bring her home, knowing that if she talks, he's going to jail. I do not believe it. I do not believe it. All right. So number 2 is this. Number 1 is there are 9 women who have come out with some sort of an accusation. Number 2, only 2 of the 9 have come out with an accusation that is an illegal offense, something that he could be brought to trial about. Charges could be brought. Only 2. One of them is the girl who was 14 that I just mentioned, that has obvious flaws in her story, things that don't add up, don't make sense. And the other one is the 16-year-old that supposedly met at the restaurant, and he went behind the restaurant. She said her boyfriend was coming to get her, and drives behind the restaurant in the car, and supposedly tried to molest her, knowing that the boyfriend will be there any minute, might even witness the event. Does that make any sense to anybody? Judge Moore would have to be really not a very smart guy. He'd have to be pretty brass to do stuff like that. He would have been in jail a long time ago. That's my opinion. And again, I do not know the guilt or innocence of anybody here. I'm just telling you what I see here. All right, so you're asking, what about these other 7? What about all these other girls? What's that all about then? These are other girls who were supposedly teenagers at the time and are saying that Judge Moore had asked them out or was interested in dating them. My friend, that's not a crime. And by the way, some of them were 17, 18, 19. A teenager's 19, by the way. And by the way, it is not against the law to date a teenager, even if you're 30 years old. And I know many, many people who had boyfriends that were 30. I'm not saying that that's necessarily a good thing. I'm not saying that that's wise, but it's not wrong. It's not illegal. And it's happened for hundreds of years in this country. And there's nothing sinful about it. There's nothing illegal about it. There's no charge that can be brought. And he always got the permission of the mother. So they're trying to get him on the teenage thing. You understand why. You understand why they're pushing trying to ask him questions. You know, did you date teenagers? You understand what that's about? It's not illegal and it's not sinful. And he hasn't been charged with he hasn't been accused of an illegal act with those 7 girls. What's it about? They're trying to set a precedent that this man was a predator of teenagers. It's all a big scam. It's all a big scam. The only 2 that have any legal bearing that were illegal are the 14-year-old and the 16-year-old, those 2 stories. None of those others have accused him of anything wrong. Now there is the one who claims he touched her in his office, touched her on the behind. To me, that story is ludicrous. She's with her mother. I think she was in her 20s or 30s. Judge Roy Moore was already married at this time. She was an older girl. She wasn't a teenager. She claimed that on the way out, her mother was in front of her going out the door and he grabbed her behind. Friend, do you see, are you seeing red flags here? Anybody that was that brass do that kind of stuff right in his office where, you know, what would happen? You out there that are married or you out there that have a girlfriend, what would happen if somebody grabbed your girlfriend like that? What would she do? Would she just keep on walking? She probably would scream. She probably would jump. Hey, you know, that kind of thing. And her mother's right there. And probably people outside the office there. Do you think Judge Moore is that stupid? If he's that brass and that stupid to do something like that right behind the back of this girl's mother, this man would have been in jail years ago. This just doesn't add up. These are girls, in my opinion, that are being paid or whatever the reason is. I don't know. But these don't add up. So 2 stories, only 2 of these stories have legal bearing where it could be brought a felonious charge against Judge Roy Moore. And only 2 of them, all right? Now let's move on. So that's point number 2. By the way, the 16-year-old who claims she was in the car behind the restaurant, I believe it was a restaurant. It was that old something restaurant where they had the E and it's not supposed to have an E. She supposedly has a yearbook. And here's another red flag. Gloria Aldham or Aldham or whatever her name is the lawyer that's representing her. And they have this yearbook claiming that Judge Roy Moore signed this yearbook. Now you might be asking, what's the big deal? It's not against the law to sign a yearbook. They're trying to connect them. They're trying to connect Judge Moore to her, trying to make it out that they knew each other very well. And Judge Moore says he didn't know her. So you see what that's about. What we have found and what Judge Moore's lawyers have come out publicly and said, and have been saying so every day now, they're asking for the yearbook to be given to a third party, some experts to look at the signature, because they explained that there were a lot of things wrong with that. They do not believe, and I do not believe, that signature is Judge Roy Moore. I believe it was forged. Now, if you were her lawyer, and if you were her, and you really had his signature, this was real, wouldn't you want to give this to an expert and let that expert come out and say, yes, we've looked at this and we believe it's real? Because by the way, ink, they can tell if that ink isn't old. They can tell. And And so they have refused to give that yearbook to anybody. And I went on record earlier saying nobody will ever see that yearbook, because that yearbook will incriminate that the girl who was 16 at the time, because she's lying. And that yearbook is a fraud, and she knows it's a fraud, and she's in serious trouble if that yearbook ever gets in the hands of the attorneys and they have that looked at. Now, she could still claim ignorance, I guess, but it's a fraud, my friend. If it's not a fraud, they would gladly give that to an expert and let the experts prove that it's real, but it's not real. All right, let's move on a little faster here. Number 3, if there are lies, if these two women are lying, you know what that's called? Defamation of character. At least that's one legal thing. Judge Roy Moore has reason to bring charges against these girls for false accusations, for defamation of character. And, everyone's saying he should resign. Resign, and then 6 months after the election, he's proven to be innocent. And then what? He's lost the Senate seat. America has lost. Alabama has lost. American people have lost. How do you fix that later? Can't. All right? He should not resign, by the way. Should not resign under any circumstances here with what's been given so far. There's no evidence. If these are lies, this is defamation of character. It's a very serious offense. Number 4, there is a difference. Now, don't miss this. There is a difference in evidence and accusations. How many people do I see out there talking about, well, I believe it's true. I believe he should resign. He needs to step down because of all this evidence. There is no evidence, not a shred of evidence for those 2 girls. Remember, there's only 2. There is absolutely no evidence that anything happened with Judge Moore and those 2 girls. None. There's accusations, but no evidence. Now, I copied that out here. I've got it on my computer here. I'm going to give you the definition of the word accusation. This is from Webster's, Mr. Webster's 1828 dictionary, the only dictionary I use for the English language, the Webster's 1828. Here's what he says the word accusation means. Now, this is important. Don't miss this. If you're ever in a courtroom, this will be important because those lawyers know this stuff. An accusation is this: the act of charging someone with a crime or an offense. In other words, that girl who was 14 is accusing Mr. Moore of taking illegal liberties with her when she was 14 years old, taking her to his house. So that's an accusation she's made. The act of charging with a crime or charging with an offense, the act of accusing of any wrong or injustice. The charge of an offense or crime, or the declaration containing the charge. So, in fact, Matthew 27, Mr. Webster has a verse in here, Matthew 27:37, concerning Christ being accused, falsely accused. They set over his head his accusation. In other words, that he was accused of something. And but an accusation does not mean you're guilty, not by any means. And an accusation is not evidence. An accusation is something that the police or the district attorney has to look at to determine if there is evidence. So let me move on. So number 1, there are 7 to 9 women. Number 2, only 2 of those women have brought an illegal offense or a claim against Judge Roy Moore. Only 2 girls. Number 3, if those girls are lying, it is called defamation of character. And I'm sure there are other laws that are broken too. Those 2 ladies they've got reason to be fearful if they're lying. Number 4, there's a huge difference in evidence and an accusation. Let me read evidence here. I read you what an accusation is. Evidence. Here's what Mr. Webster says evidence is: that which enables the mind to see truth, proof arising from our own perceptions of the senses or from the testimony of others. Did you see that word proof in there? Evidence is that which enables our mind to see truth, and it's proof arising from our perception of our senses, from the testimony of others, or from inductions of reason. Our senses furnish evidence of the existence of matter, and he's given examples here. Any instrument of writing which contains proof Evidence is anything in writing that gives proof of something. See, notice the word proof there. And he gives an example in here in the book of Jeremiah. I delivered the evidence of the purchase to Barak. That's when Jeremiah bought a parcel of property. They brought this document to give evidence of the purchase. In other words, they signed it and everything. See, that yearbook would be evidence, not that he committed a crime. The yearbook signature would be evidence that he knew that girl, and he said he did not know that girl. Of course, after 40 years, he could be mistaken that he didn't know her. But that would be some evidence there that he maybe had not told the truth, that he did know the girl, all right? So that's why that yearbook is so important, and that's why they won't release the yearbook, because they know that it won't hold up. And I hope he subpoenas. I hope they go after him. I mean, these are serious things to bring these kind of charges against somebody. All right, so there is a big difference in evidence and accusation. Right now we have accusations by 9 girls, but only 2 of those girls are bringing an accusation of a felony. All right, are you with me so far? Don't leave me yet. Got something real important we're going to do now. Number 5 on my list. Generally, don't miss this, generally, before criminal charges are ever brought against an individual, before criminal charges are ever brought before an individual, the district attorney or his assistants look at the evidence to determine if they have a case that can be proven in court. Let me read that again. Before criminal charges are brought, and there are no criminal charges with Judge Moore. You know why? Because there's no evidence. You know why? Because there's just accusations by 2 girls, and those accusations have some obvious flaws in them, in what they're telling us and asking us to believe. Obvious flaws. I mean, you're telling me Judge Moore called her on the phone, 14-year-old girl, leaves a phone record. I mean, he's not smart enough to know not to leave a phone record if you're going to go commit a felony with a young girl. Leaves a phone record. Then we find out she claims he called her in her bedroom, or she talked to him on her bedroom phone. There was no bedroom, according to her mother. Somebody's lying. According to her mother, no phone in her bedroom. All right? Now, how come this doesn't matter to Ted Cruz when he said that Judge Moore should step aside because these are serious accusations? How come Mitch McConnell don't see this? These guys are lawyers. I'm bothered by this. This is simple stuff. This is a man trying to be destroyed by not only the Democrats, but the Mitch McConnells, the rhinos. Before criminal charges are ever brought against an individual, the evidence is looked at. So them accusations got to be turned into evidence. Now, there is none. And there's nobody investigating. There's no criminal investigation here because there's no evidence. There's only a couple of accusations. And the DA has to look at evidence. By the way, remember Bill Clinton? Remember the dress? See, first it was her word against his, but then there was a dress that she was smart enough to hang on to. And now there's what? Evidence. There's a difference in accusation and evidence. Monica Lewinsky had some accusations against the president. Nobody was going to believe those accusations. Then she came out with the dress. Remember that? Remember Drudge? Matt Drudge became pretty well known because of those stories there. They had evidence. Now they had physical evidence tying Bill Clinton to her, and that was when he came out. Of course, he'd already lied. So see the difference in an accusation and evidence? Evidence would be a phone record. Doesn't mean you're guilty, but hey, why did you call this girl? You talked for 20 minutes to this young lady. What was that about? Now, she claims you picked her up. There's evidence. That doesn't mean he's guilty. That would be evidence. Now, can you go back that far with phone records? I have no idea. I don't know. But again, there's nobody looking at this. There's nobody looking to see if this is true. This is just accusations trying to destroy the man. When the election's over and he's out of the way, these will all go away. Criminal charges are brought when the district attorney or his assistants look at the evidence to determine whether there is enough evidence to bring a trial to prove guilt of the person. They look at the evidence. They weigh. You've heard of the term weigh the evidence. They weighed they said, all right, how will this look in court? If we brought this before a jury, is there a good chance they would bring a guilty verdict against this man? There is no evidence here. None. There is 2 girls. By the way, it don't matter if it's 100 girls. There are dozens and dozens of women that have come out in support of Judge Moore who said they've been around him for years and he's never been improper at one time. So, that's character witnesses there. So, all right, again, we've got 2 girls, 2 ladies. Now, there'll be more. You just hang on. There'll be some more. All right. You understand how this works now, the difference in evidence and an accusation. There is no evidence. I had somebody write me, said, Brother Goodwin, I believe he's guilty because of all this evidence. And I'm still waiting for a reply. I said, you better give me some evidence or I'm going to ban you from my site. Because you're bringing something against the character of somebody and you don't have any evidence. So this young man doesn't know the difference in evidence and accusations. And all right, so let's move on a little faster here. Number 6, a person is innocent until proven guilty. I don't have to tell you that. You know that. Well, why don't you live like you know that? Why don't you give this man the benefit of the doubt? He's innocent till proven guilty. Innocent until proven guilty, unless you're running for public office. That's what I lost his name again. The Mormon that ran for president. For some reason, I lost his name last time I did a YouTube video. Let me get to Facebook here, see if somebody's on there. Somebody help me out. What's his? Romney. Mr. Romney, okay? By the way, somebody pointed out that Mr. Romney is, being a Mormon, the founder of Mormonism. They had 14-year-old wives. And that's kind of a strange thing for Mr. Romney to have a problem with Judge Roy Moore, wouldn't you think? When his religion, the founders of his religion got some things they ought to answer for, huh? All right. You still with me out there? A person is innocent until proven guilty. No woman should ever be able to destroy a man by just accusing him of something. You can't defend yourself. You've got to have proof. You've got to have evidence. There's got to be witnesses. There's got to be more to this. Number 7, the burden of proof is on the accuser. On the Christian Post that I so adamantly shared my disgust with earlier in the program, the Christian Post ran a story by a gentleman. You can go look at it yourself if you want. It's on my Facebook page, God's Found Jubilee Facebook. This gentleman, some kind of evangelical leader, and he wrote an article, and he started out, it's with great regret that I must write this. And I said to myself, oh boy. What he wrote was he believes Judge Moore should take a polygraph test to defend himself. By the way, don't ever fall for the polygraph test. Number one, they're not accurate sometimes. That's why they're not allowed in a courtroom. There's flaws with that thing. And by the way, you could be nervous. You could be found to be a liar when you're not lying. Very dangerous to go take one of them things. But I asked that gentleman this. I said, wait a minute. You're asking the wrong person to go take a polygraph. The 2 women, of course, they talked about the many women. There's 2. Somebody tell them there's 2. There's 2 women that have accused Judge Moore of a felony. Only 2. Those 2 women, go ask them to take a polygraph. Now, I wouldn't if I was them either, because you can't trust them things. But they're not asking them. They're asking the accused to go prove himself innocent. You can't prove yourself innocent. All right, and that's wrong. And this man in the Christian Post is placing a shadow over the judge like he's guilty. And I'm very upset about that. Very unbiblical what they're doing. All right, the burden of proof is on the accuser. The accuser cannot just accuse somebody and defame their character. They have got to back up what they're saying with evidence. There's got to be evidence. All right, number 8, almost done. The timing of all this is obviously suspicious. Right after the primary ended, the Democrats, they didn't bring these charges during the primary. They waited till the judge won, and then they tried to destroy him. And very suspicious how this all turned out. right here, right before the election. By the way, the election is December 12th. And the timing of all this, very suspicious. You'd have to agree with that, right? Very suspicious that this all came out 40 years later, right before this man who's been in the public eye for decades. I mean, the Ten Commandments and all, everybody knows who he is. And now, right before this Senate race, right before the vote, all this comes out. Very suspicious. That's grounds for suspicion. That's serious grounds to give this man the benefit of the doubt. 2 girls. Number 9, it is biblically wrong to believe an accusation. It is not biblically wrong to believe evidence. It is biblically, now that the young man on my site said, I believe he's guilty because of all the evidence. And I'm still waiting on him to bring forth his evidence because I don't believe he's got any. So it is not wrong to believe evidence. It is wrong to believe an accusation. All right, so that's important. It is biblically wrong to believe an accusation. Proverbs 18:13. I shared this in the last video. He that answereth a matter before he heareth it, it is folly and shame unto him. Who's the him? The guy who makes a decision before he knows all the facts. It's a folly and shame unto him, not the guy who's been accused. Serious stuff. 2 Timothy 3:3 talks about in the last days there should be false accusers. What is a false accuser? Someone who accuses somebody without evidence. Somebody who's accusing someone that's not guilty. By the way, if you share something that you heard that you can't prove, and it happens to be a false accusation, you're guilty of being a false accuser too, even though you didn't start it. Just like gossipers, and you hear gossip and you spread it. You're spreading something you don't know to be true. It's wrong. It's sinful. That's sin. Proverbs 12:22, I won't read that. Revelation 12:10 is another one. I read all these on the last program. Now let me ask you this. What if Judge Roy Moore is not guilty? And those of you out there, and the Ted Cruzes, and I like Ted Cruz. I sent him money. I was for him during the primary. I like Ted Cruz. I think he's a strict constitutionalist. I like him. Very disappointed that he said that Judge Moore should resign because of all this going on. Very unfair of you, Ted. When the same thing happened to you during the primary and you were falsely accused. And by the way, I stood with you, Ted. I didn't believe the accusations against you. And very disappointed. I think you ought to give the judge a call, and I think you ought to publicly apologize. And not just you, but many of our Republicans out there. All right. Almost done here. Hang with me just a few more minutes. What if the judge is not guilty? We've done a great disservice to him by believing these. And if he happened to resign and get out of the race, proves that he's innocent, if that's possible, or maybe the facts come out and these girls were lying, how do you fix it? How do you fix the wrong that's been done to the man and his family? You can't. He should not resign. Let me ask you this. What if he's found guilty 6 months from now or 2 months from now after the election? What if he's found guilty? Those of you who jumped on board and decided to believe the accusations, I believe this. I believe you're still guilty of Proverbs chapter 18, answering a matter before you hear it. Even if he comes out to be guilty, you were still wrong by believing he was guilty without knowing the evidence and the facts. And you remember that. You ought to repent now while you still can. Because once he's cleared of this, and you were on board accusing him and declaring that he's guilty, you've got a problem. Now you've falsely accused a man, and you've got to get right with God. Why don't you get right now? You should not be believing these accusations. You don't believe accusations, you believe evidence. There is no evidence. There are only accusations by 2 girls that have a lot of flaws in them. All right. And lastly, just a couple of miscellaneous facts. Fact number 1, it is the rhinos like Mitch McConnell, John McCain, and others who hate Judge Moore, who have said they want him to resign. They would rather the Democrat got elected. That's the truth. Why is that? Because they know if he gets in office, they know he's innocent. And they know he'll never be shown to be guilty, and he'll be in the Senate, and they hate him, and they don't want him interrupting their one world globalist system and agenda that they have. That's the truth. All right. If he resigns, what happens? The Democrat wins. It's futile. Listen to what the governor of Alabama said. She says, I'm voting for him. I'm voting for the Republican office. She knows that if he's found guilty later on, he'll be booted out, and guess what? She'll appoint a Republican to that seat. If he resigns and you have a write-in candidate, that write-in candidate will lose, and the Democrat will win. Who's the Democrat? A pro-abortion, pro-partial birth abortion person, a pro-homosexual gay rights, gay marriage person, a you name it, liberal. Is that what we want? That's what's behind all this. All right. Okay, so that's my spiel for you tonight. Listen, get on the right side of this. It is sinful, it is wrong to believe accusations against anybody. Listen, that other senator there, Franken, or whatever his name, Al Franken, the senator that just got, you know the difference in that story? There's evidence. There's a picture. If there was no picture and there were no witnesses, that woman would not have had a story, and we should not have believed it. Of course, there's a whole list of things with Al Franken, a whole list of things. And he came out right away and admitted it because there's a picture. And of course, they're not asking him to resign, are they? But they're asking a man who's got no evidence and has not been found guilty and probably won't, and is very probably an innocent man. And they want him to resign. There's something funny about that. You're listening to the God's Final Jubilee program. I'm your host, evangelist, and author Dan Goodwin. You can find us at www.godsfinaljubilee.com.